Picture this. You're sitting in seat 12B.
Right.
You've got your bag wedged under the seat in front of you. The air conditioning's blasting that weird cold mist directly onto your forehead.
Oh, yeah, I know the feeling.
And the fasten seatbelt sign just chimed. You are totally ready for takeoff. But as you sit there waiting, staring at the seat back pocket, have you ever actually stopped to consider the massive, hidden world operating all around you at 30,000 feet?
It is a remarkably complex environment. And, well, welcome to this deep dive. Our mission today is to take a really dense stack of sources.
We've got a lot to get through.
We do, ranging from industry reports on aviation secrets and crash data analyses to insider transcripts from actual flight crews. And we want to synthesize what is really happening behind the closed doors and hidden panels of commercial flying. We're going to explore how airlines masterfully balance our fragile human biology, the extreme physics of flight, and, quite frankly, some very subtle psychological control.
Okay, let's unpack this starting right at the boarding gate. Because the manipulation, it actually begins before you even step foot on the plane.
It really does.
If you observe the sheer panic and stress of boarding, it makes almost no sense. Everyone rushes to stand in a massive line just to hurry up and wait in a cramped jet bridge.
Right, because your seat is already pre-assigned.
Exactly. The sources we reviewed offer this one piece of highly actionable advice unless you are terrified of losing overhead bin space.
Which, to be fair, is a valid fear.
True, but otherwise just board last. You drastically minimize the amount of time you actually spend cramped inside that metal tube.
Our airport behavior is largely driven by this illusion of scarcity and urgency. But while you're sitting at the gate, perhaps deciding to wait it out, you might find yourself absent-mindedly playing with your boarding pass.
Yeah, I used to just leave those tucked in the seat back pocket when I was done with them.
You really shouldn't do that. The data security experts in our sources highly recommend you treat that little piece of paper with a lot more respect. Specifically, you need to pay attention to the 6-digit alphanumeric code printed on it.
That's the passenger name record, right? The PNR.
Exactly, the PNR.
Yeah.
That single code can contain your date of birth, your contact details, your passport information,
Wow.
the credit card you used to book the flight, and even your IP address if you booked it online.
See, I hadn't even considered the IP address aspect. That is a massive digital footprint just sitting on a piece of cardboard.
It is. Leaving it behind or just tossing it intact into a public airport trash can is a significant security risk.
There's also another code you should be aware of on that pass.
Yes.
Though you definitely don't want to find it. The dreaded SSSS.
Secondary Security Screening Selection.
Yeah, if you see those 4 letters, it basically means the airline's algorithm has flagged you as suspicious.
Right. And this typically happens if you've booked a last-minute flight, a one-way fare, or if you paid for your ticket in cash. It basically guarantees you'll be subjected to additional, often pretty invasive security checks.
So, okay, let's say you make it through the extra screening. You finally board, you sit down, and the first thing the flight attendants tell you is to turn off your electronics.
Or switch them to airplane mode, yeah.
For years, the implication has been that sending a text message might somehow scramble the pilot's instruments.
Which is largely a myth.
The data shows that over half of all passengers leave their phones on during takeoff and landing anyway. If the planes aren't falling out of the sky, why are they forcing this rule on us?
It fundamentally comes down to psychological compliance. The airlines and aviation authorities are well aware that a modern smartphone won't bring down a commercial aircraft.
Right.
But they need passengers to disconnect from their screens and actually pay attention to the safety briefings.
Because takeoff and landing are the most dangerous parts.
Exactly. They are the most critical phases of flight. The crew needs your cognitive load freed up so you can absorb their instructions. It's a behavioral tactic disguised as a technical necessity.
That reframes the whole experience for me. And if they are managing our attention that carefully, it makes you wonder how else the environment is controlling us. Which brings us to the actual biology of the cabin.
This is fascinating.
I've always noticed I feel profoundly weird after a long flight. And airplane food notoriously tastes awful. But according to the research, we've been blaming the caterers for a problem that's actually caused by our own bodies.
Yeah, the food itself is generally quite normal. The issue is the environment you're consuming it in. When you're cruising at altitude, the humidity in the cabin drops to around 10%.
10%.
To put that into perspective, that is actually drier than the Sahara Desert.
That is insane.
It is. And that extreme lack of moisture completely dehydrates your sinuses. Because your sense of smell is inextricably linked to your sense of taste, your palate is severely compromised.
So everything just tastes bland.
Right. In that arid environment, your sensitivity to sweet flavors drops by about 15 to 20%, and your sensitivity to salty flavors plummets by 20 to 30%.
Knowing that, how do the airlines actually get us to taste anything?
Well, they have to engineer the meals specifically for that altitude. First, they blast chill the meals on the ground.
Oh, so they aren't frozen. That's a huge myth.
Right, they're not frozen. But to compensate for your deadened taste buds, caterers pump those meals full of extra salt and sugar.
So you're consuming way more sodium than you would in a comparable meal on the ground.
Significantly more, yes.
But there is a brilliant, actionable hack in our sources for this. If you want your food to taste better, you should actually wear noise-canceling headphones while you eat.
It sounds bizarre.
It does. But studies show that the constant low-pitched drone of the airplane's engines actually dampens our sensory perception. So by blocking out that auditory overload, you allow your brain to better process the flavors you're experiencing.
It perfectly illustrates how interconnected our senses are. A loud environment literally dulls your ability to taste salt.
Speaking of things you put in your body on a plane, if we're mapping out the safest ways to exist in this space, we have to look at the lavatories. Our sources are incredibly clear on one golden rule.
Never drink the tap water.
Never drink the tap water in an airplane bathroom.
The underlying issue there is the water storage infrastructure. Airlines do regularly clean the water tanks with sanitizing products.
Sure.
However, over time, the parasites and bacteria that inhabit those tanks build up a resistance to the chemical cleaners. It is an environment that is incredibly difficult to keep completely sterile.
Yeah, I will be sticking to bottled water from now on. Oh, and there's an interesting design quirk in those lavatories that most passengers completely miss.
The door locks.
Yeah, you aren't actually locked in. Cabin bathrooms can be unlocked from the outside. If a toddler locks themselves in or there is an emergency, all someone has to do is lift the metal "no smoking" sign on the door.
And just slide the hidden knob underneath.
And the door just pops right open.
Beyond the lavatories, the physical layout of the seats themselves carries some hidden statistical realities. A lot of people wonder about the safest place to sit in the unlikely event of an emergency.
Right. I was looking at the Time Magazine crash analysis in our sources. They covered data from 17 plane crashes over a 35-year period. I always assumed an aisle seat near the front would be best, just for a quick escape.
A lot of people think that.
But the data shows the worst place you can sit is the middle third of the plane, specifically in an aisle seat. That spot only has a 56% survival rate.
And the safest.
The absolute safest seat is the dreaded middle seat, way in the back rear third of the plane. It boasts a 72% survival rate.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is vital to remember that these statistics apply to incredibly rare events.
Very true.
Commercial aviation remains astonishingly safe. To put your mind at ease, your overall odds of dying in a commercial plane crash are about 1 in 3.37 billion. You are fundamentally safe, even if you are sitting in the middle third aisle.
Even with those odds being so low, the crew is constantly communicating about potential hazards around the cabin. There is an entire secret language hidden in plain sight. For instance, I found out the small red or black triangles located above certain windows aren't decorative.
No, they are not.
They show the flight attendants exactly which windows offer the best unobstructed vantage point to visually check the wings and the engines if they suspect a mechanical issue.
And if you look closely at those windows, you'll also notice a tiny hole near the bottom.
The bleed hole.
Yes. Airplane windows are made of 3 separate panes of incredibly strong acrylic. The inner pane protects the window from passengers, and the outer pane handles the extreme atmospheric pressure of flight.
So what does the middle one do?
That middle pane contains the tiny bleed hole. Its entire purpose is to balance the air pressure between the middle and outer panes and to prevent the window from frosting over in the sub-zero temperatures outside.
We also hear a coded audio language throughout the flight. Those constant chimes aren't just random bells.
Definitely not.
A single chime usually means the pilot is warning the crew about upcoming turbulence, or honestly, they just want a cup of coffee.
Right.
2 chimes usually signal that the plane is approaching 10,000 feet. But if you hear 3 or more chimes in rapid succession, that indicates a serious problem, like extreme turbulence or a severely ill passenger.
The cabin is also designed with built-in safety illusions.
The illusion.
Yeah, consider the yellow oxygen masks. The safety briefing sort of implies they will keep you breathing comfortably until the emergency is over.
Right, just put it on and relax.
The reality is that those masks are connected to chemical oxygen generators that only hold about 15 minutes of breathable air.
Only 15.
Yes. Furthermore, at cruising altitude, if cabin pressure is suddenly lost, you only have about 15 to 20 seconds of useful consciousness to secure that mask before you pass out.
Wait, 15 to 20 seconds. That sounds almost impossible to manage if you're asleep or if you're trying to help a panicked toddler. How is 15 minutes of air considered a viable safety standard?
It seems alarmingly short, but 15 minutes is more than enough time for a trained pilot to initiate a rapid descent.
Okay.
Their immediate protocol is to bring the aircraft down to an altitude where the ambient air is breathable without assistance. The mask is merely a brief stopgap.
That makes sense.
Similarly, the cabin lights dimming during night landings isn't to set a relaxing mood for the passengers.
Right.
It is so your eyes are fully adjusted to the darkness. If the landing goes poorly and the plane loses power, you need to be able to immediately see the emergency floor lights to evacuate, rather than stumbling blindly.
The logic makes total sense once you understand the physics of the environment. But here is a design choice that has always baffled me. The ashtrays.
Yes.
Smoking has been banned on commercial flights for years, yet every single airplane bathroom still has an ashtray built right into the door.
That is a fascinating example of engineering for human failure.
Human failure.
Yes. Airlines know that some highly stressed passengers will inevitably try to break the rule and sneak a smoke. If they do, and there is no safe receptacle, they are likely to stub that cigarette out in the paper towel trash bin.
Oh, which is full of dry paper.
Exactly. That creates a massive fire risk. The airlines are prioritizing the structural safety of the aircraft over strictly punishing the rule breaker.
So they're worried about paper towel fires, but we all carry massive, sanctioned fire hazards onto the plane in our pockets anyway. The sources highlight lithium-ion batteries as a major modern threat.
They are a significant concern. The batteries in our smartphones, laptops, and tablets are susceptible to a phenomenon called thermal runaway.
What happens then?
If the battery is damaged, it heats up exponentially. It releases flammable gases and causes a chemical fire that is incredibly difficult to extinguish.
And apparently this happens frequently when people drop their phones down the side of their reclining seats.
Yes.
The mechanical parts of the seat crush the phone, puncture the battery, and suddenly ignite a fire.
Precisely. This is why aviation authorities strictly mandate that spare batteries and power banks must be kept in the cabin with you and never checked into the cargo hold.
Because if it happens in the cabin, they can see it.
Exactly. If a battery ignites in the cabin, the crew is trained to quickly isolate it using specialized heat-resistant fire containment bags. If that same battery caught fire down in the luggage hold, it could burn unnoticed until it caused a catastrophic structural failure.
Managing a literal chemical fire in a crowded metal tube requires serious authority. Once those cabin doors close, the pilots essentially become gods of the sky.
They do.
The captain has absolute legal authority. They can order people to be arrested, issue fines, and legally they can even take a dying passenger's last will and testament.
With that level of authority comes a very strict set of protocols, particularly concerning their physical readiness. For instance, the pilot and the co-pilot are strictly forbidden from eating the same meal while on duty.
That is wild to me.
It's a deliberate fail-safe against mutual food poisoning. If an ingredient is contaminated, it will only incapacitate one pilot.
I was laughing at the culinary pecking order in the sources. The captain usually gets first pick, dining on the first-class menu, while the co-pilot gets stuck with whatever is being served in business class.
Usually, yes.
But beyond their meals, the interpersonal dynamics in the cockpit are intensely managed. What happens if two pilots just fundamentally despise each other?
The airlines actually have a systemic solution to human emotion called a do not pair list.
I love that.
Pilots can submit a monthly list of colleagues they refuse to fly with. While it sounds like petty workplace drama, it is a crucial component of crew resource management.
Right, because of the environment.
Exactly. The cockpit is a small, high-pressure environment. Airborne tension or a workplace rivalry could lead to distraction or a breakdown in communication, which is quite literally a matter of life and death during takeoff and landing.
Tension is one thing, but exhaustion seems to be the much larger enemy up front. The sleep crisis among pilots is staggering.
It is a major issue.
Shifts can last up to 16 hours. In a survey by the British Airline Pilots Association, 84% of pilots admitted that tiredness had compromised their flying. Even more concerning, 56% admitted to actually falling asleep at the controls. In 2021, an Australian pilot actually fell asleep for 40 minutes and overflew his destination by 70 miles.
It is a stark reality of ultra-long-haul aviation. Human biology simply wasn't designed for it. However, technology heavily compensates for human fatigue. Modern autopilots handle the vast majority of cruising.
And landings too, right?
In certain conditions, yes. Like thick fog at major hubs, such as London Heathrow, the aircraft uses auto-land systems that communicate directly with the runway to perform complex landings almost entirely automatically.
Wow.
Furthermore, on long-haul flights, relief crews take over so the primary pilots and flight attendants can actually sleep.
And they sleep in completely secret rest compartments.
Yes, they do.
Usually there is a narrow hidden staircase near the galleys leading up to a cramped but cozy attic space. They have actual bunks with seat belts, privacy curtains, and on some luxury carriers like Singapore Airlines, they even get silk pillowcases.
While the crew rests safely above, the exterior and the lower levels of the aircraft are battling extreme realities. Take bird strikes, for example. There are over 13,000 airplane bird strikes annually in the United States alone.
I was reading through the source materials, and I couldn't believe the bizarre defenses airports use to fight them off. Reagan National Airport uses literal cannons firing blanks to scare birds away. Salt Lake City Airport deploys pigs to eat seagull eggs before they hatch. And my absolute favorite, the Tarbes-Lourdes-Pyrénées Airport in France, uses giant LED screens displaying massive Google eyes to act as aviation scarecrows.
Those ground interventions are necessary because the sky itself is hostile. Passengers often fear lightning, but commercial planes are struck by lightning roughly once a year.
Really? That often?
Yes. Before an aircraft enters service, it undergoes rigorous conductivity tests to ensure the strike simply passes harmlessly through the exterior shell. Hail, however, is a physical projectile.
Right.
Severe hailstorms have completely shattered the exterior panes of cockpit windows, forcing pilots to land the aircraft virtually blind, relying entirely on their instruments.
We've looked at what hits the plane, but what about what falls from it? The sources detailed the blue ice phenomenon.
Oh, this is a classic myth that has some truth to it.
Yeah. So toilets use strong suction to pull waste into a holding tank filled with blue chemical disinfectant. But leaks happen. When they do at 30,000 feet, that liquid freezes to the outside of the plane.
And eventually it breaks off.
Exactly. Between 1979 and 2003, there were 27 documented incidents of blue ice meteors, literally frozen human waste, and chemicals crashing down onto U.S. rooftops.
It is a jarring image, but it highlights the harsh realities of the unpressurized or unheated zones below the floorboards.
The cargo hold.
Yes. The cargo hold is incredibly loud. Ground staff are required to wear heavy ear protection, yet pets traveling in the cargo hold are subjected to this intense noise without any protection at all.
That's awful.
It's tough on them. The hold also routinely transports much more than suitcases. It carries human organs being rushed to hospitals for transplants, and frequently human remains in coffins being repatriated.
Here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when someone dies while the flight is actually in the air?
Well, the protocols prioritize the safety of the flight and minimizing distress for the other passengers. Often, if there is space, the deceased individual will be quietly moved to an empty row in first class.
And if there isn't space?
If the flight is full, the crew may simply cover the person with a blanket right in their seat, securely buckled in until the plane reaches its destination.
But Singapore Airlines took this to a whole new level for their ultra-long-haul flight from Singapore to JFK.
They did.
That flight takes a grueling 18 hours and 40 minutes on the Airbus A340-500. To manage an in-flight death over that duration, they actually installed specialized lockers sized perfectly for an average human body.
The corpse cupboards.
They literally built corpse cupboards into the plane to maintain the illusion of normalcy.
Yeah.
Just imagine sitting next to a specialized locker for 18 hours, completely unaware of what it was designed for.
It perfectly encapsulates the thesis of our deep dive today. The sky is full of hidden realities, complex engineering, and strict protocols designed to manage human fragility. But this knowledge should empower you. Understanding how the system works allows you to be a smarter, safer, and much more comfortable traveler. You now know to book the rear middle seat for safety, to bring noise-canceling headphones to enjoy your meal, and to treat your boarding pass like the sensitive data document it actually is.
You are officially an aviation insider. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We've talked a lot today about how airlines currently manipulate the physical cabin to manage our biology. But as commercial flights push closer to 20 or even 24 hours of continuous flying in the near future, how will the physical design of planes have to evolve? Will the ultimate aviation secret of tomorrow be less about the machine and entirely about engineering human hibernation? Something to mull over the next time you hear that fasten seatbelt chime. Until next time.